For our weekly business roundup of the business news that made headlines across the African continent. We are joined this afternoon by Victor Kgomoeswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. Victor is also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. Victor, great to be talking to you in our earlier time slot.
Earlier the better, Tammy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, especially for a Friday. We just want to make sure that your weekend, starts off a little bit earlier.
Exactly. You don't have to dig too deep to find me because, you never know.
You never know. You never know. Well, straight into business. Let's take a look at Senegal. They currently have one oil refinery that processes around 30,000 barrels of crude oil a day. Talk to us about their plans for the second oil refinery.
Yeah, out of the energy conference that was taking place in Cape Town, all kinds of announcements getting made, including one by the Minister of, I think it's the Ministry of Hydrocarbons in Senegal. This is a $5 billion investment, Tammy, which I probably will be divided into two installments to increase the capacity to 4 million tons, so that by 2029 there should be much more capacity. Investors, not surprisingly, coming from China and Turkey and South Korea. That's quite a fine mix. If you just think about the alliance between China and North Korea, you would imagine that they would be more leaning towards North Korea or the Democratic Republic of Korea. But when it comes to investment, money seems to just chase the best returns. But it's a minority stake that will be now held by Petrosen, which is a state-owned entity. The rest will be operated by Woodside Energy, which is an Australian company.
I mean, how likely are they going to achieve this 4 million tons by 2029? Because at the moment they're producing 1.5 million with the one oil refinery they have.
It's amazing what capital investment can achieve. I mean, if you look at the amount of money, 5 billion is not small change. So often when you see an investment like this, they are either renewing equipment, they are adding more capacity, or they are strengthening whatever infrastructure that goes with this, are able to operate longer hours, replace equipment that is not functioning properly. So the oil is there. As long as you have the reserves and you have the stock feed, you should be able to do that. The amount of that indicates the demand in Senegal and the demand from the ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. Remember, we talked about Dangote and his 650,000 barrels per day refinery, and he's already exporting to the United States, which means he's not only looking at the West African market.
Let's look at some changes taking place at Barrick. You'll remember Mark Bristow, he became the CEO and president after the merger between Barrick and Randgold in 2019. But a sudden resignation or stepping down?
Mercurial Mark, they call him that, Mercurial Mark. He's quite a tough customer, Mark Bristow. I mean, he founded Randgold and ran it for quite a while in the late 80s, I think, and he's a respected miner, no question. But it looks like there's not much chemistry between him and John Thornton. At the heart of this, the way the report goes by Reuters, is that Mali had been very hostile towards mining companies, and they were saying, we want a larger share of your business, the free carry. It has been happening now in Burkina Faso that companies are increasing their free carry, which is the part given to the government of the country where they're operating from 10% to 15%. And it looks like Mark Bristow resisted that, and as a result, there were 3 tons of gold that were seized at one stage. The renewal of license that is due in 2026 is hanging in the balance. I think that is a bigger problem. Since the 2021 coup, there has been this kind of tension, but because the renewal of the license is coming in February next year, I think the chairman, John Thornton, had to say, Mark, unless you can show that your economic diplomacy or your well, I call it government relations will improve, we have to let you go because you might end up losing the actual license of operating. And if you don't have a license in a country like that, you're not going to be able to take anybody to court. Or even if you do, that litigation could take a much longer time.
And I see Mark Hill has now been appointed as the interim CEO as well as COO. What do we know about him?
Not much, but look, mining companies often have a very huge pipeline. It's almost like the way they mine the ore and they crush it, and there's always something on the conveyor belt, but I'm afraid I don't know much. Apologies.
No. Looking at the Republic of Congo, we know that gas is pretty much at the heart of the national development agenda, and regulations are expected to change regarding some gas codes this month.
Yeah, they're realizing that unless they change their regulations about licensing and a whole lot of things, they are not going to attract the right kind of investment. This is Congo Brazzaville, by the way. So this new floating liquefied natural gas is expected to be by November 2025 already underway. The interesting thing is ENI, the Italian company, the offshore Marine 12 concession, they moved some investment or capacity out of China. I don't quite know what is behind that, but it just tells you something that Congo Brazzaville, unlike the DRC, has not had as much instability. So maybe it's becoming more and more attractive. And the hydrocarbons, for all the talk we are hearing about cleaner energy, you are still going to have to drill. And if you're talking natural gas, it's much cleaner than the other forms of petroleum or hydrocarbon resources. So it makes sense that the oil minister, Bruno Ito, would have announced this, and it's just showing you the diversity of the investors. Italian, you have Japanese, South Korean, you have American, you have European, all kinds of oil majors coming in, descending on the resource base that is Africa.
And as we wrap up our top business stories, developments around the $3 billion fertilizer plant in Ethiopia.
Yeah. In Ethiopia. And, Ethiopia is a huge agriculture economy, Tammy. Agriculture is still the biggest employer, the largest employer in terms of the number of people it employs in Africa. The limitation is the productivity is compromised by two things. The lack of use of technology, so equipment like tractors, people are still not using enough tractors. But the second thing is the use of fertilizers. So this fertilizer manufacturing plant is going to add exactly that. The farmers are already there, but to be able to increase their yield and get more certainty in the production, the $3 billion project will come in handy. Ethiopia is no stranger to multi-billion-dollar investments, having just launched the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which cost over $4 billion.
Victor Kgomoeswana, always a pleasure. Thank you for a great roundup of the leading business stories on the African continent.
It's a pleasure. Have a good weekend.
Have a great one. Thank you. That's Victor Kgomoeswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. He's also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. That's all the top business stories coming out of the continent for this week.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business.